Spokane, Portland, and Seattle 700 is a E1 44 Northern type steam locomotive built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works in May of 1983. Since its delivery back in June of 1939, this locomotive has been the pride of the Pacific Northwest. And why I present to you SP&S 700, the First Lady of the Pacific Northwest. Spokane, Portland, and Seattle 700 was delivered on June 21st, 1938, joining its sister engine SP&S 702, pulling an overnight passenger train between Spokane and Vancouver, Washington, along the north shore of the Columbia River, with number 701 providing backup and pulling freight. Owing to an undersized turntable, the Northerners did not reach Portland, Oregon until 1944. By 1947, the Great Northern had begun to streamline its premier passenger train, the Empire Builder, and it had started adding diesels to the mix. The SP&S also started purchasing diesels at this time, but they arrived after the streamlined cars were brought into service, and for a few months, the 700s pulled the Portland section of Great Northern's Empire Builder and the Northern Pacific's North Coast Limited. Through the late 1940s and the early 1950s, the E1s continued to pull the secondary passenger trains, but by 1954, the diesel had completely replaced steam for passenger service, and the E1s were assigned to pull freight trains until 1955. On May 20th, 1956, a spruced-up 700 with its normal gray smokebox was painted silver when it pulled its last passenger train, called the Farewell to Steam Run, and it had a total of 21 passenger cars carrying 1,400 passengers from Portland, Oregon to Wishram, Washington, in the heart of the Columbia River Gorge and back again. After the trip, the 700, the 701, and the 702, and the Challengers and other SP&S locomotives were sent to the scrap line. At the same time, however, the Union Pacific was offering to donate a steam locomotive to the city of Portland, Oregon, and not to be outdone, the SP&S offered the 700. It was donated on January 14th, 1958. The two locomotives, SP&S 700 and Oregon Rail and Navigation No. 197, were both moved onto recently purchased city land, renamed Oaks Pioneer Park near Oaks Park along the Willamette River in 1958, and were soon joined by SP 4449, where they sat for nearly 20 years. By 1960, No. 700 became one of the only two SP&S steam locomotives left to survive, and the other locomotive being Spokane, Portland, Seattle, number 539. Although 539 was originally built for the Northern Pacific Railway as their 1762, locomotive 1762 or 539 is on display at the Port of Kalama Interpretive Center. For nearly 20 years, the 700, along with other locomotives and other historic rail equipment, sat behind chain-link fences, slowly fading and rusting away. Only the attention of interest was Southern Pacific Railroad employee and member of the Pacific Northwest chapter of the National Railway Historical Society, Jack Holst, saved the locomotives from complete unlessonness. Mr. Holst regularly visited the locomotives and kept the bearing and rods well greased and oiled. Unfortunately, Jack Holst passed away in 1972 before the first locomotive, SP 4449, was removed from Oaks Pioneer Park and restored. In 1975, 15-year-old Chris McClarney started working on the 700, cleaning and oiling various parts. He then founded the Pacific Railroad Preservation Association, also known as the PRPA, in 1977 to provide support for the preservation work. On November 9th, 1987, the SP&S 700 was moved out of Oaks Pioneer Park to the Southern Pacific's Brooklyn Roundhouse in southeast Portland for the rest of the restoration work. With the support of many individuals and the Burlington Northern Railroad, number 700 moved under her own power for the first time on May 15, 1990, which it took part in the Washington Steam Fest event at Yakima, Washington. Although it's one of the largest steam locomotives still in operation and it's expensive to run and insure, the 700 has managed a number of excursions since its restoration on May 15, 1990, including a historic doubleheader with SP 4449 from Portland, Oregon to Wishram, Washington in return during the 2005 National Railway Historical Society National Convention, and a 2002 steam across Montana from Spokane, Idaho to Billings, Montana, and back. In the spring of 2001, the 700 ran a special excursion called the Homecoming Excursion that ran over the original SP&S main line through the Columbia River Gorge and lasted 4 days from Portland, Oregon, all the way to Spokane, Washington, in return. The 700 led the train solo almost the entire trip. At one point during the excursion, it started having mechanical issues, and BNSF 6308 and EMD SD40-2 locomotive, which will also end up being preserved, was taken off the train and was on and helped the 700 the rest of the way. The excursion ended as a result of a derailment between the tool car and the power car. The lead trucks on the power car caused the derailment to occur, ending the excursion abruptly. It was also disguised as Northern Pacific 2668, the next number available after the A3's number class ended, which was 2660 to 2667 in 1992 for the Northern Pacific Rail Historical Society convention, as the SP&S E1 design is identical to the A3 class. Other than that, the SP&S Northerns burned oil while the Northern Pacifics burned coal. The 700 was added to the National Registration of Historic Places on January 25, 2006 as the Spokane, Portland, Seattle Railway steam locomotive. Until June 2012, the number 700 and its two companions resided at the UP Brooklyn Roundhouse. The city of Portland was leasing the roundhouse from its owner, the Union Pacific Railroad, but after the railroad announced plans to demolish the roundhouse to allow expansion of the yard, the engines needed to find a new home. The Oregon Rail Heritage Foundation, with a significant support from the city of Portland, raised funds for a new restoration and visitor center down the street from the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry to provide the city steam locomotives with a permanent and public accessible home before the closure of the roundhouse. Construction of the new Oregon Rail Heritage Center began in October of 2011, and the 700 and the other two Portland-owned steam locomotives and other rail equipment was moved to the site of the new engine house and heritage center on June 22nd, 2012. They were moved indoors on July 28th once the engine house was enclosed, and the Oregon Rail Heritage Center opened to the public on September 22nd, 2012. Maintenance of the 700 continues to be carried out by the Pacific Railroad Preservation Association and a team of volunteers. The locomotive was taken out of service in 2015 for its 1,472-day inspection as mandated by the Federal Railroad Administration, also known as the FRA. In August 2020, Emery Trust awarded a grant of $35,000 to help complete number 700's rebuild, and in March 2023, Emery Trust awarded an additional grant of $10,500. In May 2025, the overhaul job of number 700 was completed, and the locomotive was fired up for display on National Train Day. Although recent restrictions made by the Oregon Pacific Railroad in 2022 may prevent the 700 from running on the railroad through Oaks Park for the foreseeable future. Welp, I have completed my look on Spokane, Portland, and Seattle number 700. It was really nice learning some facts about the 700. It was pretty cool learning that how Spokane, Portland, and Seattle 700 was dressed up as Northern Pacific 2668. I kind of found that fact pretty kind of somewhat pretty surprising. So yeah, before I end the video, I would just like to say thank you guys for 300 subscribers. This milestone means a lot to me. And hopefully by the end of this year, I will hit my goal of 500 subscribers. If you want to visit the Oregon Heritage Foundation website, scan the QR code right here. All of the footage and pictures used in this video belongs all to their rightful owners. So don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell to be notified anytime I upload a video. And like always, thanks for watching.